One race that was being very closely watched this time last week was the Sydney seat of Bennelong. Labor's Jerome Laxale took the seat from being notionally Liberal held after a redistribution to making it safe Labor territory. He joins me now. Jerome Laxale, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, but I'd say right off the top, there's no such thing as a safe seat, Tom.
I think David Littleproud might perhaps disagree with that one. Marinella's pretty firmly in that territory. Look, going into Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, were you expecting the result that came your way? I think it was a 9% swing in the end. Yeah,
look, we're currently sitting on a 9% margin, which we expect to come down a little bit with postals. That's a 13.5% swing on primary votes. So no, I wasn't expecting that. I was quietly confident a couple of months into the redistribution that there was enough to hold the seat, but to come out with that result is really humbling and just shows, that of the two proposals to go forward for the next 3 years, it was Labor that this electorate chose for the first time ever to be held on to. So yeah, it was quite a result.
Yeah, I mean, put us in the mind of you mentioned there's no such thing as a safe seat. You're certainly a marginal seat MP. Put us in the mind of a marginal seat MP going into an election like that on Saturday night. How do you try and sort of read the tea leaves?
Well, we did have the 2 weeks of pre-poll beforehand, and I was sort of parked at a booth that we'd lost in 2022, and I could tell that there was movement towards us at that booth. It felt okay, as difficult as it was for those 2 weeks. But then, on the day, obviously 46 booths around, you can't be at all of them. So you just kind of wait till those first results come in. And then pretty quickly we found out that we were just getting pretty exceptional results in the primary vote right across the electorate. I think the first 18 booths that came in, we won all of them, and at the end it turns out that we only lost one booth on the day, which is unheard of, and it goes to show the strength of the national campaign. I think the Prime Minister and the Cabinet came up with some really good policy to take forward for the next term, particularly around renewable energy, the environment, Medicare, cost of living. They resonated really well. And then we ran a really strong local campaign as well. At the end of the day, voters had a choice between someone who was local and experienced and a successive, another parachute candidate from the Liberal Party.
Yeah, I mean, you just touched on this, but as you were sort of door knocking or handing out those how to vote cards, what do you think it was that was pushing voters your way to, give you that significant swing from 3 years ago?
Well, there were two parts to it, I think. The national campaign was really strong. We defined what we wanted to do with the next 3 years really well in comparison to the Liberal Party that didn't. And then locally, it was all about being a local and being experienced. This is the second time in a row the Liberal Party have run a candidate that wasn't a local and wasn't as experienced as myself. I'd been on the council for 10 years prior to becoming a federal MP. And the issues that we talked about were really important too. This is an electorate that really cares about progress on the environment and climate change. I put that front and centre of my campaign on top of housing and cost of living, and those issues resonated really well. We had a plan, our opponents didn't, and we got the support on the day. My job now is to work really hard for those who voted Labor. A lot of people voted Labor for the first time, particularly in the new parts of Bennelong. That's a huge responsibility on me to make sure I represent them as best I can in the National Parliament.
You mentioned environment and climate change, and I'm going to come back to that in a second with you. But just quickly, Anthony Green there mentioned some pretty close races. Being in the ACT is very tight. Fremantle, he thinks Labor's just going to get over the line. In both those seats, Labor's being challenged by, Teal-type, community independent-type independents. Is that a worry, do you think, for Labor MPs like yourself going forward, that you might start to see more of these challenges in the year ahead?
Oh, look, let me just say that Dave Smith and Josh Wilson are extraordinary local MPs. I'm hesitant to comment too much on their races because Fremantle's a long way from Bennelong, and increasingly, seat by seat, you get very different circumstances as we've seen right across the country. I just know that it's the job of any MP to represent the voices of their community, and that's what I've been trying to do as a federal MP, but something I learnt really early on in my time as mayor and on council, and that's what I've tried to do here in Bennelong, and it's worked.
But how do you sort of push back on that message that, hey, I'm not tied to a party, I'm an independent, I'm going to advocate solely for you, not whatever the party's tying me to? How do you push back on that message, do you think?
Well, I explain what our processes are within the Labor Party. We do have opportunity to have pretty robust debate within the caucus and within our committees. It's a different process to being an independent, but it's an important one. And more often than not, it achieves the same outcome, progress. And that's what I know a seat like Bennelong wants. They want progress on a lot of issues. They want more houses to be built. They want bulk billing rates to increase. They want a transition to renewable energy to continue. That's something I can contribute to within the Labor caucus. And, you know, an independent will do that a different way. But ultimately, that's sort of the benefit of being in a party of government, is that we can deliver on those policies. And that's something I'll be seeking to do as part of the Labor caucus for the next 3 years.
Just on environment policy, as you mentioned there before, you've been a strong advocate for an Environment Protection Agency, for change on environmental laws. The PM mentioned this is a priority at his press conference that he held back on Monday. How do you want to see Labor push forward on this that really became quite stalled and sort of bogged down in fights with the Greens and others in the Senate during the last Parliament?
Well, we'll need to see how the Senate lands, and that's not certain by any case. Labor does not control the Senate, did not in the last Parliament, and it won't in this one. Look, there'll be a process. It's very early days. I'm very glad the Prime Minister's made it a priority. It's unfinished business, I think he said, and you know, this is the second mandate we've received to deliver a National Environmental Protection Agency and to reform our environmental laws. And I know a lot of caucus members and Labor Party members are really excited that we're in a position to do that, and you know, I look forward to participating in that process.
We heard a lot in the last Parliament about the influence of Western Australia, particularly the Premier Roger Cook. There was some reporting that, you know, he all but killed off the EPA. Is that something that concerns you?
Well, I think the Prime Minister gave a commitment at a press conference alongside Roger Cook, so he's made it a priority to deliver in a second term, and that's a good thing. You know, we've got 3 years to deliver on that promise, and I'll be working alongside whomever is the Environment Minister and to try and get it done.
Just on Bennelong again, your seat has quite a large Chinese community. What were you hearing from them on issues like migration and on rhetoric that came from the coalition around things like Chinese spies? How did that play out?
Oh, well, it showed to them and to everyone, like it wasn't just the Chinese Australian community, that Peter Dutton hadn't changed. You know, he was sort of leading the rhetoric on bilateral relationships in the Morrison government. People didn't forget that, and then we saw more of it towards the back end of the campaign from some of the coalition spokesperson. The Liberal Party were not in a position to represent diverse communities, and Bennelong reacted pretty heavily towards that. We got swings on top of what we did in 2022 in areas that have higher diversity, and I'm not surprised. You know, they need to take a hard look at themselves, and in the meantime, we'll be out there delivering for diverse communities like Bennelong every day.
The Liberals are now tossing around what to do with their nuclear policy. Climate change was also a big issue in this campaign. What would you like to see? Well, firstly, how did nuclear power play out in Bennelong, and what would you like to see Labor do on 2035 targets?
Well, it didn't play very well here, and you know, their policy is a matter for them. Our policy is very clear. We want to continue the renewable energy rollout, hit that 82% target of renewable energy by 2030, and another 3 years is just so important for that. Had Peter Dutton and the Liberals won, we would have seen investment in renewable energy fall off a cliff. Now we've got a strong message to the world that Australia is a great place for renewable energy investment, and that's a really exciting opportunity for us as a nation in the next 3 years. 2035 targets, the government needs to receive advice from the Independent Climate Change Authority. That advice will hit the minister, and then there'll be a process to work through there.
Just before I let you go, Jerome Laxale, in the last Parliament, you were on the Joint Statutory Committee on the National Anti-Corruption Commission. I know there's been a busy campaign, but I'm just wondering if you've seen some of the questions that have been asked around Paul Brereton's handling of defence issues, but given his ongoing sort of ceremonial roles in defence. Do you have any concerns there?
I'm sorry, I'm not across those questions, so I might have to get back to you on that one. I've been head first in the tightest marginal campaign in a while, so I'll look forward to resuming my duties on the Anti-Corruption Committee if I'm reappointed in the new Parliament.
Jerome Laxale, I understand that, and I fully appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.